What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Inclusologist. I'm Dr. CI, your host, where we talk about no bullshit, only real shit.
President Trump following through on a number of promises to change U.S. policies on gender and diversity.
Making changes in the military. The orders are expected to ban transgender Americans from serving.
Target rolling back a number of their DEI policies in an announcement today.
President Donald Trump is sending a clear message to corporate America to end diversity, equity, and inclusion policies or face potential legal consequences.
Burning the cities because they feel excluded.
More prisons.
Do you believe there's a difference between women and men?
Inclusion programs are coming under fire now.
The focus on race, first and foremost, has done us no favors.
But if your ideas don't pass the hurtful or harmful test, you should keep your ideas to yourself.
I'm carrying a weapon for a week, hoping to be approached by a black man so he could kill him.
How social media has led in its different stages to increased narcissism, increased emotional suffering.
The problem can never be stated in terms of black and white.
Predominantly white people coming through the business with a certain amount of kind of security in their lives.
DEI should be a lens in which you look at everything that you do.
Have you ever been judged for your appearance or what you look like?
Yes, I have.
I never thought it would become a political tool to really divide this country and really the world.
DEI has turned into a political target.
Time to do DEI efforts differently.
We've heard the statistics, and recently a New York Times article was published talking about how there were over 350,000 jobs being stripped away from black women in particular that left the workforce, I should say, whether voluntary or involuntary. Also, that 365,000 white men have accrued jobs during the time that black women actually left the workforce.
And the membership was limited to 500.
Now, there's some underlying systemic barriers to that I want to talk about. Because people say, well, stop pulling the race card, stop talking about race. Shut the fuck up. I'm going to talk about whatever I want to talk about. But the difference between me and somebody else is I'm going to do it based on facts.
Damn right. You goddamn right I could.
Here's where jobs have increased. Wind turbine technicians. Now, if you don't know what wind turbines are, I want you to Google that so you understand where they are, where they're located, what they do, and how the jobs for technicians are increasing and expected to grow by 50% with a median pay of about $63,000 depending on where you live annually, okay? If you look at healthcare, nurse practitioners are set to grow by 40%, earning a median salary of about $130,000 a year. And that's not just any work, but that's high paying care. You also see that more collegiate institutions, higher educational institutions are creating nursing programs and healthcare programs and medical schools because of the extreme shortage in healthcare. On the tech side, we see that data scientists have grown by about 34% and will continue to grow in things like information security analysts by about another 30%. And if you've ever doubted the value of coding or cybersecurity skills, data says you're missing the boat, baby. Don't sleep on healthcare management either. Because I've talked about nurses in healthcare, but medical and health service managers are projecting to grow by about 25% with a median income of about $120,000 per year. And I'm speaking in US dollars. Now, again, the Bureau of Labor Statistics just dropped their projections for the fastest growing jobs between now and 2034. And that list is a whole mood. The green energy revolution is not a dream anymore. It's a job market in healthcare, nurse practitioners, data analysts, all of those things. I repeated that because I want you to understand the problem. Who do you see when you picture a cybersecurity analyst or a nurse practitioner or a wind turbine tech?
Don't worry, I'll wait.
Too often the answer is not Black and brown, not indigenous, not disabled, and not folks from low-income communities. Now, why is that? Because the same systemic barriers that lock Black and indigenous people of color into lower-paying jobs also keep them from breaking into industries that are actually growing. There's a lack of mentorship and gatekeeping and professional networks that all add up to one truth. The future of work is being built, but not everyone's invited to the table, and how the perpetuation of white supremacy is happening. I know some of y'all are gonna feel real fragile when you hear me talk about white supremacy and racism, etc. Well, just be fragile and listen to the conversation anyways if you're willing to learn, because I know that's a sore spot for some of you sensitive people who don't want to think that you have privilege in the world, but let me explain it based on facts. I want to be real with you. This isn't just about fairness, it's about survival. Black and indigenous people of color are workers and disproportionately stuck in shrinking low-waging sectors, while high-growth, high-paying industries remain gatekeeping. Then career equity becomes a matter of economic justice. And the green economy, the health economy, the tech economy, they will shape who thrives and who struggles in the next decade. And if we don't dismantle those barriers now, the gap between who has opportunities and who doesn't will stretch wider than ever. Recently, the Department of Education started creating credit checks on loans they didn't have before. They started slashing funding in DEI programs. Guess who is benefiting from a majority of that funding and from those loans? People who come from low-income areas. If you look at data, what's the majority of people who come from low-income areas? Black and indigenous people of color. If you don't want them to attend institutions, take away funding, take away scholarships, take away loans. You can't even barely accrue debt anymore if you can't pass a credit check because you come from a low-income background. So automatically you start to eliminate a pipeline of Black and indigenous people of color from accessing institutions where they can earn degrees and or certifications or programs that get them into these jobs. Do you see what I'm saying? Do you understand how aligned that is with a perpetuation of white supremacy and making the world and the workplace look more white and more successful and creating a larger gap between the haves and the have-nots? First, you start with attacking education and the institutions that are accessible to them. The next is you slash funding from institutions centered on programs that promote equity. Those jobs require degrees. And if you can't earn a degree or you can't earn a certification or you can't even get hired to get the experience, how are you supposed to access those jobs? Because we know for a fact, look, careers change. Even when the Industrial Revolution hit, factories started to create machine-made cars and they started to replace workers. Every decade, every culture, every shift, there are new jobs being created and other jobs being erased. We have to demand representation, but equity also in how we train and who we hire, and who we promote in these fields. How can you dismiss those kind of jobs and then dismiss the access for people to get those kind of jobs or even get new jobs that you create? It's problematic. The system doesn't keep up with decision making, especially when the decision making is incompetent.
Burning the cities because they feel excluded.
More prisons. Do you believe there's a difference between women and men?
Inclusion programs are coming under fire now.
The focus on race, first and foremost, has done us no favors.
Now I want to talk about Pete Hegseth because I talked about you before, PD Boy. This is Trump's boy wonder who somehow thought he deserved to be the United States Secretary of Defense. Now Pete has built an entire career not on experience and not on expertise, but on being on Fox News, for example.
That is the single dumbest thing I've ever heard. That's a lie. And if it is slightly true, it's a reflection of safetyism.
His resume looks like the outline of a bad cable segment, y'all. But instead of actually doing work in public service, he leveraged his connections and his look at me, I'm conservative, in order to get himself into a job at a think tank, then a failed Senate run, and eventually a TV gig where he spends most of his time yelling about how liberals are ruining America. Nobody plays victim better than a villain. And people love to talk about how liberals ruin America, but let's also talk about how Republicans ruin America, because y'all think y'all fixing it when actually you break the system even more. And I'm not just going to vouch for liberals because y'all have done your own damage.
Get 'em.
If you don't know me by now, I kind of sit in the middle. I'm a bit of a centrist.
Get 'em.
But when it comes to human rights and civil rights, I'm more leaning to the left.
Get 'em.
And so I point out the flaws and the strengths of both, okay? But for now, I'm talking about DEI, which is getting its ass kicked by executive administration, this Republican one, because y'all had the wrong approach for dismantling DEI. And it starts with who you hire. Let me get back to Petey Boy, though, because here's the kicker.
I don't fuck with you.
He once ran for Concerned Veterans for America, which really wasn't about helping vets. It was about gutting the VA and privatizing services. And let's not forget the scandal under his leadership at a nonprofit where he was accused of misusing funds, spending donor money and perks instead of actual support for veterans.
I want to talk about financial mismanagement at the two organizations that you headed, which are the only test of your financial management that we have before this committee.
Now, did he earn it? Hell no. And don't get me started on his public health expertise. This is the same man who bragged on the air that he hasn't washed his hands in 10 years, y'all. He bragged about this on air, and I quote, "Germs are not a real thing." Sir, you want to run a healthcare system for veterans, but you don't believe in germs? That's just not unqualified. That's dangerous, because veterans don't need some Fox News cheerleader playing dress up with their healthcare, okay? They need leadership grounded in science, accountability, and live commitment to their service, and we thank y'all for y'all service. So let's be clear, Pete Hegseth, you didn't earn it, you don't deserve it, and the fact that you were even considered for the role tells you everything you need to know about how Trump provides leadership. It ain't about merit, it's about loyalty and optics. Now, policies created or dismantled without equity lenses can widen disparities. One of the clearest examples comes, for example, do y'all remember Trump's administration rollback of the 2015 affirmatively further fair housing rule under HUD? It's called the AFFH. Now, this requires cities and states receiving federal funds to actively identify and address racial segregation and barriers to fair housing. Now, in 2020, this rule was dismantled and replaced with a much weaker framework that removed accountability for local government. Black and brown renters and home buyers already face higher rates of housing discrimination and live disproportionately in underfunded neighborhoods. Now, with federal oversight, which we see often, local governments were free to ignore segregation patterns and avoid investing in equitable housing development. The result was Black and indigenous colors of community, which were further locked out of affording housing opportunities. Sound very similar to a concept like redlining, which for a fact we saw the numbers of people who were being pushed out of certain neighborhoods or not even being allowed in those neighborhoods.
Green meant this was a community that you could lend to, and red meant you could not.
I'm not completely against segregation if it's self-segregating for the preservation of community rooted in equity. And a single policy like the AFFH dismantled equity without the consideration of systemic barriers across multiple dimensions of housing and of life when you think about housing, education, and even generational wealth. When unqualified individuals are placed in positions of power, it erodes public trust, it undermines accountability, and it normalizes mediocrity at the top while marginalized communities continue to be over-scrutinized and underserved. Here's where we have to turn it over to ourselves. If you're tired of watching unqualified leaders make decisions that impact our schools and communities and our democracies, here's what you can do. The first thing I'm gonna say is vote. And I ain't saying just vote federally, but you need to vote locally, okay? You're starting to see that some red states are even turning blue because people are waking up and seeing the damage that conservatism has been doing to our economy and currently what Republicans are doing to our systems, okay? So you have to show up at local school board meetings. You have to ask questions about the qualifications of leaders making decisions about your kids and your schools. Or even when you get that little voting packet, make time to sit down and really look at the background of people. Look at scandals, look at their social media, check their digital footprint, baby. Everything is available to you. You just gotta go find it. Also, call out unqualified leadership, whether it's at the district level, higher education, or government agencies. You have to really start to hold leadership accountable. You gotta show up, okay? Protest has been one of the poor person, or I should say low income person's press for a really long time. You got to get active again. And protest doesn't mean just marching in the streets. It means showing up at meetings, raising questions, talking to your community, having community centered meetings where you talk about who to vote for and inform people based on what your needs are. Also, you got to support diverse, qualified leadership pipelines. From voting to advocacy, make sure that the next generation of leaders earn it. Unqualified leadership is not just a Trump problem, but Trump has done it and put it on steroids, y'all. And if we don't call it out, we normalize it. So let's just stop normalizing it and let's start doing the work. I want to say again that unqualified leadership undermines equity. Don't forget to grab a copy of my DEIing book at Barnes & Noble or Amazon. And mark your calendars on October 3rd because the DEIing documentary drops on Tubi, Fandango at Home, Verizon Fios, I don't know how to pronounce it, I'm going to be honest, and more. Now, pre-orders for Fandango at Home start on September 19th, so y'all make sure to go check out my Fandango. And remember, this is DEIing with the Inclusologist, where we don't talk about bullshit, we only speak about real shit. I'll see y'all soon.